All right, we're going to go ahead and start since we're allowed folks to come on as we are conducting the presentation. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us virtually this afternoon for what we hope will be an informative presentation for landlords and tenants in the city of Richmond. My name is Cynthia Shaw, and I am the administrative analyst for the Richmond Rent Program. Staff Attorney Charles Oshanuga, along with our colleagues from Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services, will be conducting the presentation this afternoon. Before we get started, I would like to share some logistical information. Please note that this presentation will be posted on our website at richmondrent.org under the COVID-19 rental related information page for your reference. And it will also, this presentation is also being recorded, and the recording will be posted on that website as well. If you have any questions on a particular topic today that we're going to discuss, we ask that you type your questions in the Q&A function, and that is located on the bottom of your screen, and we will address your questions at the end of the presentation. If you require Spanish translation, please select the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your screen. You will change the language to Spanish, and you should be able to hear a live interpreter. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Charles Oshanuga, who will then present briefly, and then he will introduce the presenter from Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services. Go ahead, Charles.
All right, thank you, Sydney. So again, my name is Charles Oshanuga. I am the staff attorney for the Richmond Rent Program. Thank you for all who are joining, and this is a recorded session. So for those of you who are going to eventually listen to the recorded version, I thank you as well. I'm just going to quickly go over why this is important. So today's topic will be about rental assistance, as Sydney spoke about. Why it matters to you, landlords and tenants, for the practical reason of, well, if your tenant is not paying you rent, this is one way to make you whole, landlords and tenants. If you cannot pay your rent, this is one way not only to meet your obligations to pay your rent, but also avoid termination of your tenancy and any potential unlawful detainer. So as I spoke about 2 weeks ago, there has been a change of the law at state law, and the protections that state law once afforded tenants have been substantially reduced. There are protections going forward, one of which is that if a tenant has a rental debt, has failed to pay a landlord rent, and that failure is due in part to COVID-19, the impacts of COVID-19, prior to evicting that tenant, a landlord has to seek rental assistance. If you fail to seek rental assistance when you're trying to evict a tenant based on the failure to pay rent, when that failure is due to COVID-19, you're not going to be successful. That's what the law says. So when a landlord wants to evict a tenant based on those conditions, the landlord has to file along with their unlawful detainer a statement under the penalty of perjury, verifying that the landlord completed a government rental assistance application, and they got the final decision from that application, and that final decision was one of denial. If you're denied, and if you can, and the actual denial has to be attached to your complaints as well, your unlawful detainer complaint. If you fail to do this, your case will be thrown out. That's why it's important to seek rental assistance during these times, specifically if you're going to evict between the months of October 1st, 2021 and March 30th, 2022, you're going to want to seek rental assistance prior to doing that. Cindy, can I get the next slide? So again, if you are a landlord and you're trying to evict your tenant, you need this unlawful detainer, and you want to be successful prior to doing that, you have to seek rental assistance, and you have to have received a denial of your application for rental assistance, or you have to seek rental assistance and 20 days have to have passed since the day you sought the rental assistance, or from the day you served the tenant, the notice of termination of tenancy, whichever is later. And the landlord hasn't received any verification from the tenant that the tenant is seeking rental assistance. The landlord hasn't heard back from the rental assistance agency that they're seeking assistance from. And the tenant hasn't let the landlord know in any form or fashion that the tenant has separately applied for rental assistance. If you can demonstrate all these things, just like we spoke about 2 weeks ago, the court will be satisfied with those elements. But the overarching theme of the state law going forward is if you are seeking to evict your tenant for failure to pay rent, where the rent became due, where the failure is based on a COVID-19 issue. So the rent is a COVID-19 rental hardship debt. When you're seeking to evict the tenant based on those things, you're gonna have to have sought rental assistance first, except for the very, very limited circumstances where your tenancy is completely brand new. So in line with that, we thought it would be helpful to connect both landlords and tenants with an agency that specializes in providing assistance to those individuals seeking rental assistance. So the Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services is here with us to give a short presentation on the services they provide and how they facilitate and connect landlords and tenants with this rental assistance. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce one of the employees at the Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services. His name is Elias Gonzalez. He's going to get into all the great work that they've done. So I'm going to shift it over to him.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm Elias. Thanks for attending, everyone. So I'm just going to be speaking a little bit about the Housing is Key. For the past few months or so, we've been helping a lot of people get their rental assistance. A lot of people who have trouble navigating the online application, or anyone that's needed help with the application. And so far, we've helped a pretty good amount of people get their funds and help save them from eviction, pretty much. So it's been really great. And I think it's also allowed us to know a little bit more about how the program is on the side of the tenant and the landlord of the actual applicant. So I'll be speaking a little bit on how that's been going. So can we go to the next slide, Cynthia? So the Housing is Key program was started earlier this year in response to the pandemic and the COVID, and really in an effort to like protect low-income tenants from eviction, especially those who have faced a significant impact during the pandemic. So the program will help you pay 100% of your rent for up to 18 months. It will also pay 100% of any utilities that you've fallen behind on during the pandemic. Anyone below 80% will qualify. Anyone that makes below 80% of the average median income in their city will be able to qualify. And so we're able to help out anyone that lives in the Bay except for those that live in San Francisco, Alameda, and Oakland. San Francisco has its own program, and Oakland has its own program, and Alameda has its own program as well. Can we go to the next slide? So any renter who's faced any type of financial impact during the pandemic, it doesn't have to necessarily be related to actually catching COVID or anyone that they know in their household catching COVID. As long as they suffer financially during the past year or so, they will be able to qualify. Landlords can apply as well, but because of the certain policies, a landlord is required to have their tenant apply as well. So a landlord can't apply by themselves. A On the flip side, a tenant can apply without their landlord, but it'll add some time to their application process. So we really encourage folks to coordinate with their landlords or their tenants to just let them know that they've applied and to encourage them to apply as well. We'll reach out to a lot of tenants will be like, hey, I don't talk to my landlord, or my landlord doesn't want to talk to me because I owe him thousands of dollars. So we'll offer to contact your landlord, and let them know about the program, answer any of their questions, and then a lot of times we'll end up helping them apply for the program as well. And for landlords, we've also reached out to their tenants, so just so they can both apply and speed up the process. Okay, next slide. Also, you can apply as a tenant. You can apply even if you're not behind on rent, but if you fall behind just on utilities, you can apply as well. This only goes out to the tenant though. So even if you are just applying for utilities, you still need to have proof that you're a renter. So if you're going to apply just for utilities, make sure to bring a rental agreement or anything that will prove that you're a tenant. Okay, so next slide. So at the beginning of the program, when the program was first launched, it was only going to cover 80% of the arrears. So it was going to be, the state would cover 80% of any back rent, and the landlord would have to agree to forgive that 20%. This wasn't really popular with the landlords. So eventually, like I think beginning in June, they've changed it to 100%. So now the program will cover 100% of any back rent, as well as 3 months of prospective rent. So say you owe from June till October, you'll be able to get those covered along with November and December as well, if you feel like you'll be struggling to make rent for those months as well. Okay, next slide. So these are the required documents that you'll need. So you're gonna need a proof of income, so 2020 tax return, a W-2, pay stubs, or a proof of that you're participating in a subsidy program. So CalFresh or Section 8 or anything like that will suffice as a proof of income. Proof of residency, so a rental agreement, proof of how much rent you owe, so a rental ledger, and most of these you can get from your landlord. A lot of the times the landlords will email the rental agreements or a ledger if you don't have one. And I'd like to encourage everyone to, when they're applying, to make sure to collect all their documents first and make sure that they're all in order before applying, because it'll save you a lot of time to just have it all ready and to go, and then to just be able to just submit them as organized and cleanly as possible, and making sure that all the documents are signed, and that if you say you have children and your child just turned 18 or 19, make sure that you have all any other documents as well, because they will ask. For landlords, you're required to have a W-9, a rental agreement, and a ledger, and just those three, and any information about your tenants, so their email, phone number, address, things like that. Okay, next slide. So this is what the application looks like. The application is mostly all online. You have to have an email to register, to be able to register for the account. A lot of, or there's a lot of people who come in, well, most of the people that come into our office are people who have challenge or are facing challenges accessing a computer or knowing how to use a computer. So a lot of people don't even have emails when they come in. So we'll also be able to help you create an email, and anything to facilitate you submitting your application. So once you register for the account, they'll email you a confirmation email, and then the application is on the website. You open it up, submit your documents. Usually we'll just scan everything on site and then submit them through to the website. And yeah, so we'll submit them and your application will be submitted. Okay, next slide. So as Charles mentioned, the program does offer eviction protections even past the eviction moratorium. So if you get hit with an eviction notice or any 15-day notice to pay or quit or however, if you apply for the program and complete your application within 15 days, you will be protected. So it's really great. I mean, even if you are not necessarily behind on rent, but you think that you might be behind on rent and you're worried that your landlord will give you a notice, you should apply, because it is really helpful. The eviction protections are very helpful. Okay, next slide. So once you're submitted and it can be a lengthy process. We have been seeing, I think the process takes about, usually the shortest we've seen has been like a month and a half, where we see people from apply to getting their checks. The longest we've seen is around 4 or 5 months, but the average is 3.5 months. And the reason why it takes this long is because it's a very thorough review process that they have. So once your application is submitted, you'll be on stage 2, application submitted, and it'll sit there for like a week or so until a case manager has been assigned to your case. And a lot of the times the prioritization is based on income. So those who are 50% or less of the average median income in their area will be prioritized. So that kind of determines how long you'll be waiting a little bit too. So it'll be application under review. This takes about a week or two. And if everything goes great, it'll go to QC. If everything goes great and your landlord has applied, it'll go hopefully to QC review, which is the final review process. And then it'll go to a paid status or a submitted for payment status. But if things don't go perfectly, it'll go to either pending applicant information or pending landlord information. So this happens when you don't have, like, for example, something that'll happen is that someone will turn in a rental agreement and it won't be signed, or a signature is missing, or the case manager determines that whatever document you turned in doesn't suffice to meet the requirements. So that'll happen, and then they'll assign you a task on the online portal, or they'll attempt to email you. And so this will add time to your application. So everyone make sure to have your documents signed, look through them, make sure that everything's good, everything's the correct year, everything's, up to date. Because that's what's going to ensure that the process goes as quickly as possible. And then if your landlord has applied or hasn't applied or has applied and is maybe missing a few documents, it'll go to stage 6, which is approved but pending landlord landlord information. And this is why it's really important to be in communication with your landlord when you're in the application process, because the state is required, I think 3 or 4 times to reach out to your landlord 3 or 4 times before they can move the application to QC review and to payment. So oftentimes that adds like a month and a half to your application. So please be in contact with your landlord and make sure that they've applied and have submitted all their documents correctly. We'll also be in contact with your landlord to make sure to just be on top of them so that the application process goes quicker. Okay, so next slide, please. So stage 13 paid. Hopefully it gets to this as quickly as possible. Once it's on that paid status, it's going to be another few weeks of waiting. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And then stage 15 denied. Honestly, out of all the people I've helped so far, I haven't seen anyone get denied. So if you're living in Richmond and you make below 76,000, you will be approved. It might be a while, but you will qualify and you will get approved. Sometimes what will happen is that sometimes can be kind of confusing to know where your jurisdiction is at. So for example, if you live in the city of Oakland and you apply for the state program, or you live in San Francisco and you apply for the state program, you'll be redirected to your local program. So you can submit the application, take the time to submit the application, and then you'll end up waiting to just to find out that you submitted to the wrong jurisdiction. So everyone in Contra Costa, everyone in the Bay except for San Francisco County, Oakland, City of Oakland, and Alameda County can apply for the state program. So yeah, most people don't get denied unless they're submitted to the wrong jurisdiction. Okay, next slide. So after all that's done and you've gotten all your documents in, you've waded through the application process, now you'll get to the part where you get paid or your landlord gets paid. If you applied with a landlord, usually the money goes directly to the landlord. If you applied by yourself and your landlord never got to the application, you'll be receiving that money directly. So once you get a notification that you've been approved for payment, be on the lookout for an email from bill.com. Bill.com is where you're going to enter your direct deposit information, and that's how you'll be getting your direct deposit. So a lot of the times it goes to your spam folder, or it doesn't get to you at all. So if it doesn't, you can reach out to us and we can contact our higher ups and get your case ID number and be listed as a user, and we can try to help you see what's going on with your payment. But oftentimes you'll be getting an email from bill.com, and us as users on applications will be getting notified as well once someone is approved for payment, and we'll be able to contact them and let them know that they've been approved. And this also is like it's a wait of another couple of weeks. Okay, next slide. So if you or anyone that you know needs help with the application process, or even if you just have any questions about the application process, feel free to reach out to Dietrich or I. So you can call us at 510-237-6459, extension 1606, or reach out to us on email at dietrich@eastbaynhs.org or Elias@eastbaynhs.org. You can also go to bookings.list.org to book an appointment, or you can call the Housing is Key line at 833-430-2122. We're very happy to help anyone who needs help with it, even if you are already halfway through the process, or even if you're just want to ask any questions about it. We want to help as many people as possible. So feel free to reach out to us. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
So we thank you so much, Elias. We do have a question in the Q&A box. I'm going to read it to you. And they're asking, what if the landlord doesn't have all of or is not willing to submit the required documents, example W-9?
So when if a landlord comes in we're able to provide W-9s for landlords. We just print them out and then they sign them. If a landlord is unwilling to give you any documents that you need, then you could either write like a, for example, there was one case where a landlord didn't want to give their tenant a rental ledger. So what you would do is just write a letter saying, like, to my, to the best of my knowledge, like, I owe my landlord this amount of money. I'm signing this, I attest that this information is true. So if your landlord doesn't want to give you any documents, there's ways around that as well.
Hi, this is Dietrich. I also wanted to add on to that question. If your landlord doesn't submit all the documents or decides halfway through applying that they don't want to follow through with it, as Elias stated before, it would go into the pending landlord application status or pending landlord information status. And so once they attempt to contact your landlord and try to get them to submit their documents, payment will go directly to the tenant, and they have 15 days before penalty of perjury and to pay the landlord the amount that has been awarded to them. So payment will go directly to the tenant, and you will have to, depending on what which way you would like to receive payment, whether it's check or direct deposit, would have to also follow the guidelines that the landlord would for receiving payment.
Okay, and we have a few more questions. Okay, the next question is, do you have to report taxes on your rental income to apply for funds from the Housing is Key website?
That is the purpose of the W-9. So that would be, they could keep track of that. If you haven't been recording that in the past, the IRS probably will not come after you, but you will have to, at least there will be a record of you receiving this payment for next year's taxes.
Okay, we have other questions. What is the turnaround time for payment? And the same person also said, we have been waiting for 6 months.
So I would call the call center in that case and find out where in the review process your application is. There isn't a determined um, preset timeline for this. Again, there's so many factors of prioritization that sometimes cases fall through the cracks. There was a few um, staffing issues that has caused a backlog. The LISC is reporting that they have 400,000 applications in the pool right now, and they're reviewing and paying out about 10,000 a week.
Okay.
Also,
The next- Go ahead.
if you're in this situation where you've already applied and are confused about why you're waiting so long, you can reach out to us, and we'll also be able to. We're happy to help people in that situation as well. So we don't only help people that are at the beginning; we can help them at any point in the process.
Okay, the next question is, what if the program started with Richmond Housing completed, and for the extension, you live in Oakland? How do you request the extension, or will it automatically update?
So if you already submitted a state application for the Housing is Key program, just you can still continue with the Housing is Key. Recertification is supposed to be 2 weeks after you received your payment. So I would check on your online portal and see if you've been approved for recertification. Most people have been approved for recertification. So you can you would just submit an updated ledger, an updated proof of income, and if you've fallen behind on utilities, an updated utility statement. So that's also going to be on the online portal, and it's going to be a tab that says additional funding requests.
Okay, the next question is, can I apply if I have a tenant that has good income but just denies to pay past due rent? Can I still apply, or should I apply to be able to proceed with an eviction?
So it depends on what the income requirements are for that specific tenant. I would suggest applying anyway, because if they don't apply within a certain amount of time, then you are eligible to file the unlawful detainer. And it seems like a good way to maybe allow your tenant to not have to take the financial burden themselves, and a way to try to persuade them. So that way you can receive payment for what you're owed, and if they get denied, then because the denial process for income happens automatically, so they'll review, like the computer will review, and it'll probably be denied first. I have seen a couple people who were in the wrong jurisdiction getting denied really fast, and it seems like the things that it scans first is income and location.
And that was the last question for now. You can give it a few minutes and see if someone else have any other questions.
Also, for that person who was speaking about the switch from Richmond to Oakland, that seems very specific to your situation. And if you feel like, or you didn't understand the answer, maybe reach out to us, and so we can discuss it in a little bit more detail, so we can figure out what kind of help you need for your situation, because we do also have connections to the Oakland rental assistance program if that's something that you need assistance with as well.
Okay, still no questions as of now. Oh, one more. Okay. She left her name, but I think you probably should give them a call, give Diedrich or Elias a call, and then they can take your information. I don't want to state your name on the webinar.
Oh, I just wanted to add one more thing. I don't think I mentioned this in the presentation, but the program doesn't ask for any immigration status or anything like that. So I know a lot of people or a lot of like immigrants are worried about that, but it doesn't ask, and they don't even want to know your immigration status. So your immigration status won't affect the whether or not you're denied. It's, you know, so anyone can apply that's below the income requirements.
So far, no more questions. Looks like we're ahead of time, so it's up to you. Charles, how you want to proceed? Just let it, we're gonna sit around for it till 2?
No, if there's no more questions, we can end the session.
Are there any more questions from any of the someone asked questions about the slides from today? Yes, I can answer that. They will be available on our website. If you go to our website and look under the COVID-19 section is on the main page, it will be available on our website today. For Spanish translation, it takes a few days because we have to get it translated, the slides, but they will be available as well. Are there any more questions before we end the webinar? Okay. Okay, if there's no more questions from any of the from the community, from any of the public, then we can go ahead and I guess, oh, wait a minute, one more question popped up. Are we still serving 15-day notices or back to 3-day notice?
So I'm gonna, what I'm gonna say is what I said at the last meeting, and again, this is Charles Shanuga, staff attorney. That's a legal question, and you're gonna need legal advice. I can't provide you legal advice, and you know the answer to that question will obviously be dispositive. You know, if we say something and it's wrong, you're not gonna win your case. So if you're having trouble consulting an attorney on that issue, what I would recommend is that you either call in or email to schedule an appointment with one of the Richmond Rent Program housing counselors. And we can't give you legal advice, but we could perhaps refer you for a free legal consultation if you have qualifying income. You have to be, I can't remember what the income limits are, but they serve both landlords and tenants in a clinic format, and hopefully you can get that answer resolved. I will tell you that answer, there's various views on that answer, and the state law is very unclear. So definitely, I would encourage you to seek legal advice on that.
Are there any more questions? Oh, that person said thank you. Okay.
Well,
Can I circle back to Trina Jackson Lincoln's question? Because it also reminded me of another situation that occurs. Is, well, a lot of the times that the landlords that come in to see us are either small landlords or landlords that rent out to their family, so they don't have like the best documentation. So like a lot of them don't even have like a rental agreement, like a written out rental agreement, or they don't have like their ledgers or like their statements in order. So you can also just write out a rental agreement like on the spot we know like how a rental, what information should be on there. So if there's is any document that's not there, we can write it out and help you that way. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Well, on the screen is Elias and Diedrich's information. So you guys can always reach out to them if you have further questions on how the rental assistance work. As Charles mentioned, if you have further questions that the rent program can possibly answer, you can give us a call. I'm actually putting that information in the chat. Other than that, I guess we can end the webinar.
Yeah, before everyone goes, first of all, thank you for all the attendees. Thank you for taking your time. Hopefully this was helpful. I would like just to encourage everyone on this webinar, and anyone who listens to it thereafter, to speak to any friend you might have, or tenant, or who's in this position where they either can't pay rent or seeking rental assistance. It's important. We've been told it's important, so if it's an important issue, I thought more people would be here, but perhaps they're busy. So hopefully we can all work together to get the word out and help people who are actually in need. So again, thank you all for attending. Much appreciated.